Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to our Morgan James Fall 2020 book launch. My name is Jim Howard. I'm the publisher for Morgan James Publishing, and I'm excited to be here with you today because today we have a very special guest. We have Michael Nichols. And Michael is the author of Short Life, Living for What Matters During Our Few Days on Earth. So, Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
It's great to be here.
Michael, this title, Short Life and, Living for What Matters During Our Few Days on Earth, is such an interesting title. And of course, I know a little bit more about the book having published it. But what's the main thesis of this book?
Well, it's kind of weird to say it this way, but Jim, I'm trying to get people to think about their death all the time. And it sounds kind of morbid. It kind of sounds like a downer. But I've experienced in my life just the opposite, that if I think about my death, it teaches me how to live, and it rearranges my priorities. It actually kind of pushes up to the forefront what's the most important thing in life. And so that little phrase, life is short, we say that a lot. But when you think about it, it's a powerful phrase because it speaks truth. The brevity of life is it's a biblical theme. There's lots of metaphors in the Bible that just life is short, so live it well. And so my book is trying to answer that question: how can I live it well, and how can we change death from being some kind of an enemy that we always push away, don't want to talk about, to bring it to the table, bring it up, and say, you know what, this death idea can actually teach me how to live. And so it's weird. It's countercultural. Most people don't want to talk about their death, but I've tasted the power of that lens, that perspective, and I wanted to write about it. And so that's kind of the thesis of the book. Think about your death more. It'll teach you how to live better.
Wow. And that's something I'll tell you, reading your book earlier on, and then going through, a life experience for myself has really changed my perspective, I know, on how I look at it. But when did you begin to intentionally focus on your own mortality?
That's a really interesting question, because I'm 62 years old, and I actually began when I was 41. And so that's 21 years ago. And the reason, Jim, it happened was there were three men that I knew. I wasn't super close to all three of them, but I knew them, had spent time with them. And they all died within a few months of each other, and they were all 41 years old.
Wow.
And that was the year I was 41. And it was just like these lights going off, like God was saying, Mike, you don't know how long you're going to live. You have no clue. These men are all 41 years old. Two of them died of a brain aneurysm. One of them was on a family vacation, and he died on a beach, a brain aneurysm. Another guy died in a car wreck, and it was just like, wow, you don't know how much time you have left. And so that was instrumental in getting me to think about my mortality. And then the other thing that made me write the book, it's kind of funny now. I was living in a little town in Illinois. I was going out to the mailbox to get my mail, and I remember looking through the mail, and all of a sudden there's this envelope that says AARP, and I know it's from this organization, for retired people, for seniors. And I honestly thought, I'm not joking, I honestly thought it was a mistake. I thought the postman put somebody else's name in there. I thought, I'm going to have to take this back to the post office. And I began to look at it closer, and there was my name, Michael Nichols. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm turning 50 this month. And that's why I'm getting this mail. And it was kind of a shocker too, because it was like, okay, 50 sounds old, and 50 was kind of like, okay, you're going to probably live less than the number of years that you've lived already. And so that really motivated me. I've always wanted to write a book about life lessons that God has taught me. And so I would say 41 is when I started thinking about my mortality, but 50 was like, okay, start writing. And then I started writing, and I finished it in 10 years or 11 years. But it's done. It's published.
Outstanding. And it's those moments in life, I think, that sometimes just wake us up and say, it's time to start living. And many of us, we can live really well, but it's something about when you really focus in and realize mortality is not that far off, that life takes new meaning. And for me, it was an emergency heart surgery that I had to have. And there was no, the doctors weren't sure that I was going to make it through the surgery. So that gave my wife and I an opportunity to sit back and say, that phrase, life is short, there's a wake up call. And then your book came along, and it's so well written and so well thought through. And I think it's going to be a big asset for people if they read the book and really start to understand, where you're coming from when you talk about the topics that you talk about. But speaking of that, how would you describe your writing style?
I would say, Jim, I would use words like transparent and very vulnerable. And I'll tell you why I wanted to write that way, because those are the kind of speakers and teachers and authors that speak to me. It's not the ones that have it all together. It's the ones that talk about the nitty gritty part of life and the good, bad, and especially the ugly. People like Henry Nouwen has been one for me, John Eldredge. There's just different authors that are very transparent in how they write. And I became convinced that I was an expert on one thing, and that was my life and my journey. And someone told me early on, and Henry Nouwen mentioned it in some of his writings, that our stories are really not for ourselves. They're for other people. And I really felt like, okay, Mike, do you have the guts? Do you have the courage to write a transparent story about the good, the bad, and the ugly, the mistakes that you made? And so I prayed myself up for courage. And I want to give away everything in the book, but I talk about a time in my life when I was sexually abused. I talk about a time when I was emotionally abused by my father. I talk about an addiction that I had to fight through. I talk about those chapters in your life you want to edit out and you don't want to tell anybody. And I think God has convinced me that there's power in transparency and there's power in authenticity. And so my writing style, it's short stories, it's short illustrations, not all from my life, but a lot of them from my life. I just know that connects with people and that draws people in. So that's kind of the style. I did write 40 chapters. I wrote purposely short chapters, and you can read them pretty quickly. And that's why I wanted to write something that could be like a 40-day spiritual adventure for someone, or maybe even a 40-week where they read one chapter a week or one chapter a day. So I kind of crafted it as it's not a devotional, it is a book, and the theme ties it together, the short life. But they're very readable chapters. And I feel like this is going to sound a little narcissistic, I think, but I love reading this book. And I wrote the book and I wrote all the stories and they're all real, but I read this every morning because I keep getting stuff out of it. And it's not because of me, it's because of the power of the stories and the truth of the principles. So I would say I'm a very transparent and vulnerable writer, and trying to put it all out there. And that's what I'm doing.
Amen. Oh, that is awesome. And, I often share that same sentiment with many of our authors, because as we publish books, authors are oftentimes telling their story. And it's very interesting how many are hesitant or nervous or worried about what's going to happen when that story is out in front of the public. But I can tell you for a fact, we've seen it year after year after year. It's when we are transparent and it's when we're willing to share a journey that the reader is able to connect deep enough to pull that veil of vulnerability down just enough for our messages to seep in and really have that impact. And you're right, your book is written so well. You can't help but to find those themes that you can align yourself with. And anyone who reads this book, I think definitely will be impacted and look at their life differently. And I hope that's the case. So one, thank you for being bold and willing enough to follow that call and share your story with others, and being willing to take people on this journey with you. And I think that is one of the most incredible things that anyone can do, is to share their story. And I love what you said. Our story is not for us, our story is for someone else. That is so beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
So Mike, hold up that cover so people can see the
Yeah.
book.
Yeah,
And
I love they gave me a couple things to show it. I love the little leaf that's there hanging, and it's a really great picture of you don't know when that leaf's going to fall, and but yeah, this is what it looks like, and I love the way it feels. It's got application questions at the end of every chapter, so it could be a kind of a thing for a small group or just for you individually trying to think, how can I apply this chapter to my life? But no, I'm very happy with the way the book turned out, the way it feels, the way it looks, and I can't wait to I've been sending it out, some advanced copies to a few people, and it's already starting to help people, and they're asking me for more copies, and so I just think God's going to use it. I've been praying big prayers over it it'll help a lot of people.
well, we are too, and everyone watching this. Michael's book is available where anywhere that you would buy your book, so online, offline. So you can go out and grab your copy of Michael's book right now. It's Short Life: Living for What Matters During Our Few Years on Earth. And I encourage all of you to read this book. Whether you think you've got life figured out or not, I guarantee that you will find one thing in this book, at least, probably multiple, but at least one thing that's going to make you think, that's going to encourage you to live just a little bit different. And if that one piece affects your life, then it was well worth the read. Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and talk with us today. So if someone's watching this right now, maybe they've read the book. Maybe they're watching this, but they've read the book. Maybe they haven't, and they want to investigate more. What's the best way for our viewers to connect with you outside the book and find more about what you're doing?
Yeah, I'll give you like two or three things here. Probably the best way is my email, and that's just M for Mike, and then Nichols, Nichols. So M Nichols at Lincoln Christian, all one word. That's where I teach, Lincoln Christian University, lincolnchristian.edu. So M Nichols at lincolnchristian.edu. I do have a website, and it just is michaeledwardnichols.com. And I have lots of blog posts on there and things like that. And then I'm kind of excited to tell you, Jim, I haven't told you this yet, but on my church website, right, I'm a pastor and a professor, and it's in Mason City, Illinois, and it's called, the website would just be masoncitychristian.com. But if you did masoncitychristian.com and then a / short life, the title of the book, we're going to have a lot of stuff there starting on November 24th, the launch date. And I'm preaching a sermon series, 8 sermons right now. All the videos of those sermons will be on there. My manuscripts will be on there. We'll have like discussion questions for small groups. We even did a really cool sermon bumper that had like a leaf falling, and all that's for free on our website if somebody wanted to use this as a teaching series or a preaching series. And so I'll give that again. That would be masoncitychristian.com / short life. And so any of those ways you could get a hold of me. And like I say, I really want to engage with people if I can and help them any way I can. And I am busy, but I love to try to engage with new people if I can.
Outstanding. Well, there you have it. And folks, I encourage every one of you watching this to go get a copy of Michael's book right now. Read it, apply it, and then look for how you can connect with Michael on the outside of that book. Definitely I look forward to going and getting some of those resources that you're putting up on the 24th. So super exciting. Michael, thank you so much for taking time to share that with us today, and continued success on everything that you're doing with the book and outside of the book as well. And for all of you watching, thank you guys so much also for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you on our next one.